Treyarch is such an interesting studio. At the start of their involvement in the Call of Duty franchise, they were recognized as the secondary COD developer, pumping out the publicly accepted, lower quality games in between each massively successful Infinity Ward COD release. But when they released 2008's World at War, they struck gold with the combination of the Nazi zombies horde mode and the use of Call of Duty 4's new killstreak and loadout system in the World War II setting. I think the studio gained a massive confidence boost because their next game, Call of Duty Black Ops, was one oozing with a newfound confidence. I'm someone who holds a lot of nostalgic memories for Black Ops. Its campaign made very clever use of characters from World at War and dove headfirst into the action movie direction that the series was clearly going in. The multiplayer took after Modern Warfare 2 and upped the attachment, killstreak, and perk variety. It also introduced bots, combat training, theater mode, custom player emblems, and the new COD points currency system. This led to a variety of cool ways for players to interact with the game and feel like the game respected their investment in it. And, of course, the Zombies mode returned, but this time with a new, more action focus, instead of the horror wave defense focus of World at War. Black Ops was a big deal back in 2010. It was finally a COD game that Treyarch could prop up as their spin on Call of Duty, and Activision clearly took note of this. Now, Treyarch has been creatively locked and chained to the Black Ops sub-franchise of Call of Duty for over a decade. Each subsequent entry in the franchise would become increasingly more indicative of a company getting a bit restless and wanting to explore other ideas. But they had an obligation to just keep pumping out titles under the Black Ops name. This history brings us to today, with the release of Black Ops Cold War. It was originally a separate Call of Duty game a la Ghosts and Infinite Warfare, with the development being headed by Sledgehammer Games and Raven Software. That game was then transformed, becoming a sequel to the first Black Ops after Sledgehammer Studios' semi-collapse, and Treyarch was given the order to shelve whatever they were working on and come in and save this doomed Cold War project. What's funny is this is the second Treyarch game in a row to have a really turbulent development. The last game, Black Ops 4, was originally a weird post-apocalyptic-y hero shooter a la Overwatch, but it had to be rebooted after incredibly poor internal feedback and quickly turned into as close to a Call of Duty game as they could get it in the short time they had left for themselves. Cold War is very similar. And with all that in mind, it's hard for me to approach Black Ops Cold War as anything other than a Frankenstein video game, cobbled together partly using what was left of an entirely different project. I wanted to see how true Activision's promise of a direct sequel to Black Ops was, and I wanted to see how well Treyarch was able to pull off the game with the short development time of less than 2 years. My friend Alexandra and I played through both the Black Ops 1 campaign and Black Ops Cold War back to back, and then went on to explore everything the Zombies mode and the multiplayer had to offer. I'm feeling pretty confident in my opinions now, and I would like to share them with all of you. If you do end up enjoying the video, a like would be appreciated, and I'll be including timestamps down below for those who are only interested in certain aspects of the game. I'm taking a pretty big risk by making such an expansive project like this that isn't Halo related, but if you guys enjoyed the video, let me know, and let me know if I should do more of them. With that being said, let's begin. At its conception, the Call of Duty franchise was one that, while having each installment be an entertaining, interactive Hollywood blockbuster, always made sure to have one foot on the brakes in respect for the real soldiers who fell in these real-world conflicts. Historical quotes in between checkpoint resets would break the illusion of the game, always reminding you that these conflicts were real, and that unlike you, the soldiers that fell were not able to restart from the last checkpoint when they died for reasons they couldn't have seen coming. You were never the hero of a Call of Duty campaign. You were one of many soldiers, not being expected to survive the campaign that you were fighting in. As the series continued into the late Xbox 360 generation, it began taking baby steps towards you, the player, as a main character, being perhaps a bit more special than the soldiers around you. Modern Warfare 2 was the first time that the series took a solid step in this direction, with Soap McTavish from Call of Duty 4 now being a separate, speaking entity in the campaign who sported a comical mohawk and leapt from exploding buildings. As for Black Ops is, in my opinion, the first time the series completely shredded any semblance of real history, mortality, and the duty of soldiers, and took off sprinting down the road of being an action movie with you as the protagonist. I don't say this in a negative way, by the way. Well, the Modern Warfare trilogy began as a carefully considered and quite classy critique on the Iraq War and the United States as a de facto world police force. It eventually got sidetracked before falling down a rabbit hole of action silliness. Black Ops is a pulpy thriller, with an unreliable narrator at the helm leading the player down a path of globe-trotting from conflict to conflict, not to analyze the morally difficult questions the United States' involvement in Vietnam caused, but to hunt down the very villainous Dragovich before he can unleash his dastardly plan on the world. We are in grave danger from the communists. Our freedom, our very way of life is at risk. I'm told you are the very best we have. Anywhere, Mr. Mason. A meticulously rendered John F. Kennedy tells you, the player. If you go into the campaign expecting a mechanically engaging experience, then I think Black Ops as a campaign has aged rather poorly. There are very little personal freedoms that the game allows you outside of which guy in a small room you would like to shoot first, before your buddy runs ahead to open a door, then allowing you to proceed. But when considering it as an interactive 4.5-hour action movie, it's really hard to resist being pulled into its campy story, gasping at its over-the-top twists and turns. And even though I think the final mission of Black Ops is weirdly low energy and feels a bit rushed, I think the game has enough production value, confidence in its vision and flair that it overcomes its eye-rolling, press RT to punch the villain ending. Is Black Ops worth playing in 2020? I think it honestly depends on what you want in a shooter. The kind of shooting gallery approach worked better in the more historically grounded and down-to-earth campaigns, but if you crank that difficulty down to something like maybe easy, let the artificiality take you. You're an actor in the lead role. Your co-stars are performing their hearts out and following the script to a T. The stunt guys that you're shooting at with the fake Russian accents, they're dying convincingly, ready to get up and do another take if you fumble your lines and get gunned down, prompting a checkpoint reset. Play your part, say your lines, follow the script the developers slavishly prepared, and Black Ops will be an outstanding time. Here, a decade later, Black Ops Cold War claims to be a retroactive, direct sequel to Black Ops 1. It didn't begin development as a Black Ops game. With this in mind, I couldn't approach this seriously as a true Black Ops sequel. Instead, I was curious about how convincing of a Black Ops game Raven could make it. The first mission began with a lighter being lit, a grungy meeting in a bar, a firefight, and plenty of over-the-top explosions and references to the original game. But as the campaign progressed and we were ping-ponged between the world of the Black Ops gang and the world of Russell Adler, the seams between whatever the original game was and this new Black Ops game grew and became more and more awkward. I'm not sure if Russell Adler's world of Soviet spies and espionage was developed before the effort of injecting Black Ops DNA into it, but it's quite common to have Woods, Mason, and Hudson drop in for a mission or two, give us some winking nods to the original game, maybe even have a character directly quote the original game.
Comrade Belikov, we are in grave danger from the capitalists.
We are in grave danger from the communists.
Collective, our very way of life is at risk.
Our very way of life is at risk.
Before all of this mysteriously disappears and a completely different mood and tone takes root. The game seems to not care for the consistency of its world and how authentically it wants to seem. One mission, we are in a very self-serious Germany where the language is respected and the voice actors are indeed speaking German, or sneaking through Soviet facilities with Russians actually speaking Russian. Skip a few missions ahead, and you're sneaking through a KGB headquarters of Moscow, where all the Russians are American and British voice actors speaking to each other in English with their best fake Russian accents. As someone who is Russian and grew up in a household that actually spoke it, this "Good morning, comrade, we are Russian, yes?" fake Russian accent nonsense is so eye-rolling. It feels like there's two different kinds of games that were baked together here. One is a very interesting, if extremely undercooked espionage game where rudimentary, simplistic stealth mechanics are key, and you solve fun little brain teasers so that you can unlock missions where you go to shooting galleries with zombie-like AI that feel dated in a way Alex and I were not expecting. For all of the expensive action set pieces and Black Ops characters who are modeled and handled like they need a registered trademark logo tattooed to their foreheads, the campaign felt wildly inconsistent and indicative of the development cycle that it had. The new voice actor for Woods I actually found to do a fine job in the role. It's obviously not James C. Burns, and at times his delivery feels very off, but I'd say he's about 75% there. And after a while with this guy, I began to believe him as Woods.
Don't get him started.
Nah. Hold on, let me set the record straight.
Here we go.
So yeah, Castro and I have some history between us.
I can't blame this new voice actor for Treyarch and Activision's role in not seeking out James C. Burns, but this new voice actor, he's trying. He's trying really hard, and I think he does a fine job as Woods. I would prefer to have James C. Burns back, though. There's a mission where this cartoon Woods and the new Mason, who I actually don't think is very good, return to a remastered mission from the first Black Ops campaign, which felt quite crudely inserted into the story. The production value of this mission wildly fluctuated in consistency, with AI spawning and despawning as we left and entered rooms, and very clunky shootouts took place, and it's when Alex and I really noticed that some missions seemed to lack polish, while others seemed very glossy and finely tuned. For me, the best moments of this campaign were when it was independent of the Black Ops IP. Russell Adler was a fun character to pal around with, in a Fight Club Brad Pitt kind of way, and the tale of your relationship with him went in a direction that, while being very obvious, was kind of fun. The moment Alex and I saw a suspicious room that looked like something that could hold a person, we placed bets on where the story would be going, and we were both absolutely correct. What we didn't predict, though, was how the game would allow the player to recognize the morality of what was being done and reject it. The good ending, eye-rollingly, is some "yay, the good guys won, America saved the day" nonsense, but the bad ending is something rather interesting. It's not canon, but it's an ending that Alex and I felt quite satisfied with when compared to the good ending. In general, many of the darker and more violent aspects of the campaign I felt were handled with a bit more empathy and humanity than I was expecting. Starting with World at War, Treyarch began to get a bit fixated on wartime violence. Not in a, "whoa, war is really messed up" kind of way, more so a teenage, "whoa, this game is so edgy, war is so brutal, dude." Maybe it's due to Raven handling the campaign and not Treyarch, but this game felt like it had much more humanity to it than Black Ops 3, which felt like a pouty teenager with so much edge you could cut yourself by just looking at the TV. As a Call of Duty war game, Black Ops Cold War does the apolitical, we're not saying anything tap dance with a bit more grace than last year's Modern Warfare, and while yes, it is weirdly tone-deaf for this game to pretend that the Reagan administration was super inclusive towards those of all genders and nationalities, Cold War gets away with it by never really pretending to be a realistic Cold War game. Is it a sequel to Call of Duty Black Ops 1? One of my favorite interactive action movies? No. The sequel is Black Ops 2. But as a side story in the Black Ops universe, I think Cold War manages to achieve that in its campaign. I bought this as the Black Ops universe. I'm not sure though if I like Black Ops Cold War. The very short production timeline is obvious, and while Treyarch has never had the strongest sound design in the series, always opting for the pop gun approach to weapons fire, their attempts to play catch-up to Infinity Ward's production value from last year yields just inconsistent results.
Strike ready.
For every moment of unusually high detail in the campaign, there are just bizarre moments that feel rushed and sloppy in the sound design, animations, and visuals. A pretty popular channel called SkillUp did a video recently where he praised the Infinity Ward engine in Black Ops Cold War, and while I'm not surprised that he was wrong and mistook this as Infinity Ward's Modern Warfare engine, there are enough cracks in the visual and audio presentation that do betray these are Treyarch tools, not Infinity Ward tools. Treyarch's Call of Duties have traditionally always looked a few years out of date when compared to their sister studios, with the lighting engine in particular really struggling with natural lighting, foliage, and skin. I remember confusingly searching the graphics options of Black Ops 3 on PC because it looked downgraded from the previous year's Advanced Warfare. Like, maybe I had a graphics option turned off, but no. At max settings, Black Ops 3 just didn't look quite as good. Human hands looked like rubber gloves painted a skin tone. Exploding body parts were neck and neck with Team Fortress 2 in terms of graphical fidelity, and the game was just too unusually orange and kinda looked like mashed potatoes with textures painted over them. Black Ops 4 is when I think the Call of Duty community really noticed that something was up with Treyarch's Call of Duty engine, since it somehow was a step down from Black Ops 3, which already looked a bit rubbery to begin with. Black Ops Cold War is definitely a welcome step up for Treyarch, and the first Call of Duty game from them in a while to actually impress me graphically, but it's still got a bit of that Treyarch-y, rubbery flatness, which is disappointing since Modern Warfare last year felt like an astonishing generational leap for Call of Duty tech-wise. Human hair in Black Ops Cold War feels... how do I describe it? It looks like it's underwater constantly, if that makes sense. It's weird and floaty, and it has this weird glow to it. It just never looked right. And skin actually looks really good for the most part in this game, but every now and then, you'll see someone who still has that classic Treyarch melting wax look to them, or you'll see an explosion or particle effect that looks distractingly flat. People are saying that the graphics of Black Ops Cold War are bad, and no, I would disagree. This game does not look bad. It looks good, but it's still got a bit of that Treyarch lack of polish to it. It's good, though. The animations, though, are also a bit of a mixed bag. Well, on its own, I think this is easily Treyarch's best effort in terms of their animation quality, ditching the kind of low-effort, stiff jank of Black Ops 3 and 4, and adopting something that does look more natural. But there's just something off with the transitions between animations, such as reloading a weapon and then instantly falling into a sprint animation. It always looks stiff, and there's a lack of grace. But I think that this comes from a studio that was so used to just riding on serviceable animation quality during Black Ops 3 and 4 that now, when bullied into upping their production value by Modern Warfare last year, they find themselves in new territory that they're not used to. Black Ops Cold War does not have bad animation quality. We're long past the days of Treyarch just forgetting to give certain guns walking animations. And while stiff-looking, very stiff-looking compared to Modern Warfare, I appreciate the honest effort in this game to step up their animations. I'm hoping that as time goes on and Treyarch's animators and engineers build more natural animations and interpolation systems, that these issues are ironed out, because I liked what I saw in Cold War despite the jank. This is the first Call of Duty from Treyarch this console generation where I felt that it was relatively caught up with its sister Call of Duty studios visually, and despite the cracks that did show up due to a lack of polish, a lack of time, and maybe, I don't know, Treyarch's weird, slightly dated Call of Duty tech, I found it to be a good time, and it looked good, if a bit downgraded from last year's game. Well, World at War was a very clever remix of the Call of Duty 4 formula, taking the RPG-esque perk and attachment system and translating it into World War II. Black Ops 1 was Treyarch's first crack at expanding the Call of Duty 4 formula. Modern Warfare 2 and Black Ops 1 were two very interesting and divergent paths for the unintentionally addictive formula that Infinity Ward had stumbled upon in Call of Duty 4. While Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer pursued a loud, militaristic power fantasy, using the color palette and atmosphere of the media portrayal of the Afghanistan war, Black Ops 1 opted for something a little less real, adopting a colorful color palette and focus on that kind of back-alley homemade spy gadgets type of aesthetic to paint not a realistic depiction of the Cold War, but a colorful espionage action fantasy. To really sell the idea of a hush-hush series of illegal skirmishes, the progression and loadout system is framed around the idea of COD points, which you use to purchase firearms, tactical equipment, some of questionable legality, camouflage sprays for your guns and face, kill streaks, new perks, and so on. The maps take you all around the globe, with snowy Soviet stations, the rain-soaked rooftops of Hong Kong in the dead of night, and abandoned Russian train yards, these just being a few small examples. Even the multiplayer maps that were set in the Vietnam War give off a sense that the match itself is something that both sides are hoping won't be in the history books. The arsenal was toned down from Modern Warfare 2. Instead of tactical nukes, you had dogs. Instead of expensive Predator missiles and Harrier jets, you had C4 strapped to little toy RC cars and an off-the-record quick napalm strike. The guns were a mixture of real weapons, experimental prototypes, and even incredibly obscure but real weapons that had a history to them that not many people know about. Black Ops tastefully used hidden history and the appearance of a Cold War spy action movie to create a classy and original spin-off of Call of Duty 4, something Treyarch could truly prop up as their spin on Infinity Ward's formula. Treyarch went on to experiment with the COD formula in their own ways, tending to follow industry trends as they came and went, experimenting with the near-future military in Black Ops 2, and then going straight into look guys, we're Titanfall with wall running, enhanced mobility craziness, as well as the press RB and LB to activate your hero abilities that Destiny had popularized the previous year. Treyarch eventually hit a creative roadblock, unfortunately, with Black Ops 4, when early on in development they tried to develop its multiplayer component into something heavily inspired by hero shooters. After poor internal testing, the alleged hero shooter was redeveloped and redeveloped until it felt a bit closer to something more traditional Call of Duty, and that's the game they eventually released to us. In my opinion, it was a confusing game with a lot of contradictory game design values, a severe lack of content due to the late in production reboot, and lots of press RB and LB to superpower, something that the community was starting to grow really frustrated with. Black Ops Cold War would be the first historical shooter Treyarch has worked on in quite some time, and because of this, I do feel that there are some issues present due to the studio's unfamiliarity with this style of game after years of doing just weird stuff under the banner of science fiction. If you played last year's Modern Warfare, the process of setting up your class is very much the same. Cold War features a similar gunsmith system, only a little bit less authentic and robust. Treyarch also continued the trend from last year of skimping out on real-world gun licenses and just making fake, fictional versions of real guns. They unironically call the SPAS 12, one of the most iconic shotguns in all of Call of Duty, the Gallo. I'm not calling that a Gallo. It's a SPAS 12. Well, Treyarch also brought over the field upgrade system from Modern Warfare where you press the Overwatch buttons to pull out a piece of equipment that recharges. Treyarch also made some decisions in the gameplay loop to differentiate itself from the previous year's release. Treyarch's score streak system has had some drastic changes to it, and it's a bit controversial in the community. Your score now no longer resets upon death. So if you keep playing the game, your score meter will eventually get charged up enough that you can summon your streaks. So I actually have a couple of theories on why they might have done this. The first theory is that despite Treyarch being dragged away from the futuristic hero shooter enhanced mobility setting, kicking and screaming by Activision, they're still struggling to let go of that hero shooter approach. So they took the score streak system and reworked it into a Trojan horse of sorts for the hero abilities that they seem weirdly fixated on, such as an enchanted firebow or magically spawning armor. In Black Ops 1, silly things like a minigun needed to be dropped in via a chopper, introducing the risk of it being captured and giving a token effort to make its sudden presence on the map have at least some authenticity. While I appreciate that Cold War lets me summon something from my pocket as ridiculous as an enchanted firebow, I can't for the life of me tell you where it came from or how it got in my hands, or why Treyarch thought this fit authentically into their 1980s Cold War game, over something more appropriate like the explosive crossbow from Black Ops 1. There's a lack of authenticity. These weapons come out of nowhere, you summon them via magic. I miss the days when military hardware like this had to actually be called in. It made more sense within the logic of the game. Something I noticed during play is that the firebow actually reuses the exact same animations from Black Ops 3 5 years ago, which probably means this was repurposed code. It's a bit disappointing because it just signals to me that Treyarch has no interest in pursuing anything more grounded. They want the hero shooter stuff to stay, and I don't know. Just as someone who liked Black Ops 1, this is disappointing to me. My second theory on why they may have changed the score streak system is that Treyarch may have recognized during testing that their game is incredibly hard to stay alive in for very long. So they reworked the score streak system to ensure that you can still get them even when caught in a death loop. The reason that second theory actually sticks in my mind is because I do believe this game has some significant problems. The vocal COD community seems very angry about the skill-based matchmaking system that the game has. I think that people often confuse aggressive skill-based matchmaking with core gameplay problems that unintentionally promote an aggressively sweaty gameplay style in all players. And while there is a lot of that in Cold War, I think the criticisms of the skill-based matchmaking system in place are not just valid, but actually worth listening to. Something is weird in this game's matchmaking, and I don't like it. So this is the way that modern Call of Duty seems to handle it. It's like this. Do well in a match, be advanced up a rank in an invisible skill ladder, and then you will be rematched with and against players who perform roughly like you. Do poorly for a few games in a row, and you'll actually be knocked down that invisible rank ladder and be thrown into easier games. What's even creepier about this matchmaking system is that it tracks things such as how many times you slide in a match, what routes you take. It's tracking everything you do and calculating that to find people who can go against you. And what really sucks about this skill-based matchmaking system is you can't actually stay with any really fun lobbies you find. After every match, your lobby will kick all players, and it'll find a new batch of players that the matchmaking algorithm deems acceptable for your skill level. This is a big departure from how Call of Duty used to do it, where your lobby would actually stick together, and you'd all wander from match to match together like a big gung-ho version of Mario Party. That's what created the legendary social atmosphere that Call of Duty used to provide its fanbase. You'd know over the course of an evening that Timmy420 would usually be running around with a shotgun or a diamond knife, or that Poop from a Butt 47 would be running around with noob tubes. You'd spend the evening hopping from game to game with your lobby, getting better and better at fighting the gamer tags you were familiarizing yourself with, and also making some friends along the way. Players would come and go here and there, but the vibe of the lobby would remain mostly the same as you all bounced from game to game, voting on what map you'd like to play next. By getting rid of this and adopting an invisible ranking system for matchmaking, throwing your whole lobby in the trash and finding a bunch of competitive brick walls to throw you against, it leads to a chaotic, exhausting, and stressful matchmaking experience where every game is a roll of the dice in terms of who you go up against and how well you'll do. I get anxious in Cold War when I get double or triple kills because I'm not a great player. Usually what happens is I just catch folks off guard. When I get these accidental streaks though, the matchmaking system now thinks I've suddenly become a pro player and the next few matches turn into a meat grinder for me. You hit this skill plateau of sorts, where you can't really improve. So if you accidentally do too well in that match because you, drank coffee with your breakfast, you are then thrown into matches that you are woefully unprepared for, and you're just tossed around like this ragdoll until the game finally drags you back down the invisible ranking ladder. It's even creepier when you consider that as early as 2019, Activision submitted their second patent for a matchmaking system that pairs players up in a way that subtly encourages microtransaction spending. They did it once and people got mad, and they claimed they had no interest in actually implementing it. And then they submitted another one in 2019. Season 1 of Black Ops Cold War is almost here, and it's going to come with a battle pass and microtransactions, and it's got me thinking about their matchmaking algorithm and why it feels so strange. What sucks about this skill-based matchmaking system is that it also leads to a lack of variety in how the maps are played. Since everyone is roughly at my skill level, we're all approaching objectives and map flow in kind of the same way, and that's where another issue crops up. Part of what made me drift away from Treyarch's style of Call of Duty design is largely to their predictable map design, which feels almost scripted in how they guide and push players into gunfights. Treyarch map design is usually very basic, with simplistic 3-lane structures and an emphasis on holding down sightlines and just spamming score streaks. It's a style of multiplayer that began in Black Ops 2, and it's one Treyarch never really abandoned because, well, frankly, it was incredibly popular with the Call of Duty community. In this game, though, with this skill-based matchmaking system, and these gameplay and loadout kit choices made, I think Treyarch's style of Call of Duty is going to run into a lot of long-term issues if they don't reevaluate how they designed their maps, kit, and gameplay systems. By carrying over Modern Warfare's aiming down the sights reloading, Cold War further allows you to maintain your view on these sightlines unobstructed, and then combined with a field upgrade such as maybe a motion detector, just plant it behind you to watch your back, it's pretty clear where the problems come in. Hell, it's hard for me to actually capture gameplay in this game because most of it is just me finding a lane, hiding behind cover, throwing a spy plane up in the air, setting a motion tracker behind me, and I'm good to go. Just farm the poor souls who can't get out of their spawn. Maps like Garrison are unusually bad in this regard, and honestly, I don't know how Treyarch could fix it without serious geography changes to the maps. This trick rarely worked for long in Modern Warfare last year due to the fast time to kill and the less predictable map design. Even with the weapon mounting system and the aiming down the sights reloading, you weren't guaranteed to be completely fine as you were. All it took was someone with the right gunsmith combination to manufacture a weapon faster than you, or traveling out of the spawn lock via a weird, unconventional map route. Every match in this game feels the exact same. I predict that in the coming months, Black Ops Cold War is going to become just a game of locking down lanes, without the abstract map design of Modern Warfare to allow for a bit of flanking. This issue's probably only going to grow worse, and unless somehow mitigated by whatever the future DLC holds, I have no clue how Treyarch is going to solve this problem. The gameplay and loadout issues, combined with the score streak issues, and then exacerbated by the unusually, weirdly aggressive skill-based matchmaking system, led to one of my least enjoyed Call of Duty experiences in years. As a sequel to Black Ops 1, I feel it absolutely fails to capture what made that game so social and enjoyable as a Cold War game. And as a follow-up to Black Ops 4, it takes, in my opinion, many of that game's issues and just runs with them. And I'm not sure how or what Treyarch can do to just chill this game out. I'd actually like to hear some suggestions in the comments below. The larger modes, like Combined Arms, just kind of feel like a skimped down version of Ground War from Modern Warfare. I would honestly rather just play Modern Warfare's Ground War mode, or maybe Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 1's Conquest, both of which offer better and more enjoyable social experiences for myself and others. As someone who did enjoy Modern Warfare last year, despite its many problems, and someone who absolutely loves Black Ops 1 multiplayer to this day, Cold War, ironically, felt cold and alienating to me. I won't be returning to the multiplayer after completing this review. I've actually already uninstalled the multiplayer portion of the game, and I feel like I've seen everything it has to offer. I also have zero interest in seeing the kind of nightmare world that the microtransactions turn the game's art style into. I'll still play Modern Warfare every now and then because I really like that game's animations. And in researching this video, I actually played quite a bit of Black Ops 1 on the Xbox, and interestingly, it still has a population. It's hard to find some games, but it's definitely still playable. I was thinking about just trying to get my first ever gold camo. Yeah, I've never gotten gold camo in Black Ops 1. I don't know. Maybe this is the year I finally do it. The PC version of Black Ops 1 even has a server browser, which means I'm not at the whims of a matchmaking system to find games. I can just pick a server that looks fun and just join. The Call of Duty community seems incredibly frustrated with Cold War's matchmaking system, and I have a challenge for them. If any big content creators find themselves watching this, whether you played Black Ops 1 or not, give it a try. Every week or so, stream or make a video on the game's multiplayer. Talk about what it did better or worse than Cold War. Use it as a grounding device for the direction you would like Cold War to go in. On Xbox One, it's still got players, and the PC has that server browser that's easy to use. Show Activision and Treyarch what they got wrong by using a game that got so much right. It's definitely janky. The peer-to-host matchmaking system in that game feels very weird and goofy, but if you care, you'll stick with it. Keep doing this until you see the changes that you'd like. Cold War multiplayer just ain't it, Chief. I didn't like this. To say that Call of Duty Zombies mode is important to me is an understatement. Until the Blundell era, COD Zombies mode was one of my favorite gaming pastimes alongside Halo and maybe Minecraft. I spent so much time in the foggy bunker of Nacht der Untoten, the electrical asylum of Verrückt, and the grungy, dirty, heavy metal laboratories of Der Riese. And when the original Nazi Zombies maps ran their course with me, I would spend hours browsing zombiemodding.com in order to download custom, fan-made Nazi Zombies maps, because the Horde mode was special to me. Very special. From the unbelievably creepy eyes of the zombies, to the pale skin of their freshly dead bodies, to the stiff and unnerving way they'd waddle up to barricades and methodically tear them down just to get to me. I consistently felt hunted by the reanimated Germans I killed in the World at War campaign. They always knew exactly which room and what corner I was hiding in. I was both scared and deeply enthralled by the anxiety each time the round counter got higher and higher, and the wide, glowing eyes of the moaning corpses got closer. They always got me in the end, but each time I played, I held out just a bit longer. World at War was, and still is to this day, my bread and butter for the Zombies formula. It's my favorite version of the Zombies mode, but its sequel, Black Ops 1, is held in the highest regard by veterans of the Zombies mode, and I believe it's when the mode truly exploded. The key to Black Ops 1's success was a shift from the dark and oppressive and defensive horror setting with windows to defend and corners to be trapped in, over to an action extravaganza with flashy colors, brightly lit halls, and zombies with glowing eyes so bright and skin so comically rotten that they no longer appeared deeply unsettling, but rather amusing. You'd fight them in a Nazi movie theater, you'd fight them in the Pentagon, you'd fight them in a snow-covered lighthouse, hell, you'd fight them on the surface of the moon. Zombies was big during Black Ops 1. I was quite petty and annoyed about its shift away from the horror and defensive gameplay, but it was hard to deny Black Ops 1's success. As the mode went on though, design directors changed and the goals of the mode changed. Starting with Black Ops 3, a man named Jason Blundell took over responsibility for the mode, and he took it in a direction that I found deeply alienating and annoying. By the time Black Ops 4 rolled around, most of the community seemed to have also soured on the mode's direction as well. Blundell did eventually leave Treyarch for what it's worth, but it would take a miracle to interest me in the mode again. It would take a reboot. Black Ops Cold War Zombies is a complete, mechanical and narrative soft reboot for the Zombies mode. One that feels like it's in direct dialogue with the history of the mode and the mistakes it made along the way. The first map of Cold War Zombies is, rather fittingly, a semi-remake of the very first Nazi Zombies map, Nacht der Untoten. The new concept goes like this. During the Blundell era, the Zombies mode became this bloated mess of magical nonsense, Deus Ex Machinas, dimension hopping this, dragons that, diesel punk, Alcatraz, Easter eggs. What started as a rather classy horde mode with a simple backdrop of meteor fell from space and Nazis used it to make zombies, bloated into this out-of-control fanfiction-y mess of alternate dimensions, magical books, gods and dragons and retcons, which just made things even more complicated and dumb. The Zombies mode, it was collapsing under its own bloated weight, consuming the mode's accessibility, ruining its once classy and enjoyable tone. The mode was this unrecognizable and out-of-control monster that was tearing itself apart. Well, the writers did something clever. All of that nonsense was collapsed into one single place, an evil mirror of our own world, a place called the Dark Ether. It's a world where the bloated mess of what the Zombies mode had become was squeezed into it like a suitcase full of old clothes that just barely shuts. That dark place has been rotting and mutating for thousands of years, spawning an unholy ecosystem. Strange creatures roam the land. Worlds and concepts are fused together with no rules and no logical sense. In the real world of Black Ops, a Nazi experiment into atomic research accidentally opened a tear into this twisted world, and in the month of November 1983, the Soviet Union discovered this old Nazi breakthrough and picked up where the Nazis left off. They turned back on the Nazi machine, and the breaches into the Dark Ether are now popping up worldwide. Dead things are pouring through these unholy rifts, and whatever they kill will rise and kill. The clock is ticking, the dead are rising, and the next chapter of Call of Duty Zombies starts here, in the appropriately named Die Maschine, German for the machine. Not a bad setup, right? We have an excuse for globe-trotting to zombie-infested maps. The public of the Black Ops world isn't aware of the zombie outbreaks, which means the mode can't get as stupid and loud as it did in Black Ops 3 and 4, and we are coincidentally back where we were in Black Ops 1. decades-old Nazi experiments now threatening a world distracted by the Cold War. And so comes your role in stopping this impending threat of the undead. Each match starts with your multiplayer character being airdropped into Ground Zero for the Dark Ether breach, tasked with sealing it up and shutting down the machine before the threat of an impending zombie apocalypse has to be made public. Or you can just drop in and survive as many rounds as you'd like. Whenever you get bored, there is an option to call in an evac out of the hot zone, and this is a tidy excuse for why the map can be replayed over and over again. You're dropping in, taking a quick look, killing a couple of zombies, and then getting out when you think that you've seen enough. What took me by surprise even more than how tidy the setup was is how Treyarch approached the mechanical overhaul of the zombies mode. Cold War Zombies is something completely different from the traditional Treyarch formula, and while that may be annoying for some, I feel that it's a really fun new take on the mode. The mechanical overhaul starts with two main areas for me: the point system itself and the new overhauled crafting system. Previously, damage done to zombies would net you 10 points, with the killing blow netting you a different amount of points depending on how the zombie died. A body shot would be 60 points, leg or arm kills would be 50, a headshot would be 100, etc, etc. This point system was never changed after World at War, so as the years went on, people became great at optimizing point runs, shooting an entire 8-bullet magazine through one zombie leg into another zombie leg on round 1 for 160 points, and then knifing both of them for an additional 260 is just one of many examples on how to get the most amount of points out of round 1. That kind of math seems cool, but it really breaks down the gameplay. As time goes on, you train your players to look at a horde of zombies not as a threat, but as a horde of points to be farmed, tactically equipping the least damaging weapon and just getting magazine after magazine of points from the horde. Players began avoiding weapon types that killed the undead too quickly, or kill them in a way that doesn't net you that many points, such as launchers. It was bad for the gameplay. In Cold War Zombies, the points have been simplified and streamlined. Damage no longer awards points, and you'll be given a flat 90 points for a standard kill, and 115 points for a headshot or knife kill. Now the focus is on killing the zombie horde, not keeping them alive as a points farm. This also means now that weapons such as shotguns or launchers are absolutely valuable, since they're quite good at the whole killing thing. The Cold War Spaz 12 shotgun may be one of my favorite weapons in all of Zombies, which is crazy. The second main point of change was the introduction of an overhauled crafting system. It acts sort of like a refined version of the buildable system from Infinite Warfare Zombies. The way it works is that zombies will occasionally drop garbage. Green garbage can be used to make certain low-level things like weak armor, explosives, and the such, while blue garbage can be used to give you stronger armor, craft kill streaks, and increase your weapon level so that it does more damage. The points you get are spent on opening doors, buying guns off the wall, buying drinkable perks, and turning your ballistic weapons into laser weapons via the Pack-a-Punch machine. These are just a few of the many cool ways to become increasingly more equipped to kill the undead. It doesn't stop there though, because Treyarch went out of their way to make sure that the zombies are now able to match an increasingly more powerful player. After World at War, the titular zombies lost a lot of their bite. In Black Ops 1, they lost the ability to grapple and slow you down, which meant that you could easily slip and slide past them with no sweat. Black Ops 3 then toned down the aggression and lethality of the zombies, making them further less threatening. A problem was brewing. The zombies in the zombie mode were becoming easier and easier to kill. So Black Ops 4 tried to address the issue of the zombies just not being that much of a threat by flooding its maps with these special enemies and creatures. It's a choice that was not appreciated because many felt that it took away from the whole zombies part of the zombie mode. In Cold War, Treyarch has surprisingly resisted what I would assume was a strong temptation to repeat the Black Ops 4 approach. Instead of throwing magical creatures and monsters at you, They reshifted the focus back on the stars of the mode and reinvented the undead themselves. Their iconic screams have gotten a complete remake, ditching the zombie wailing that we've grown quite familiar with starting at World at War's Verrückt map pack. It's a bit less creepy sounding and a bit more goofy, but something cool is I swear they've snuck in a few remakes of classic Nacht der Untoten sounds from World at War. Listen to this. Am I crazy or does this sound like World at War zombie sounds? The zombies still do the thing where they begin moving faster and have higher health as the rounds go on. But interestingly, in the round 15s or 20s, the zombies begin spawning with armor that needs to be knocked off, which makes them harder to kill. By the round 40s, they actually begin to do more damage. By the time you're at round 50, they're all moving so fast that you have to sprint to stay ahead of them, and they're downing you much quicker than before. Black Ops 1 zombies and onwards always grappled with this issue of the mode paradoxically becoming easier to play as the rounds got higher, since the zombie running speed eventually leveled out and they'd form into these large, predictable hordes that you could just kite in circles for hours. Seeing Treyarch properly try to address the difficulty fall-off and the collapse of the gameplay at high rounds is really cool. I'm personally a fan of World at War's approach, where the difficulty came from the zombies getting through your defenses and just overwhelming your holdout position. But this is a solid, action-y way to make the mode more difficult for those who prefer the just running around approach to gameplay. But in order to break up the repetition, Treyarch introduced an evolution of the classic Hellhound in the form of the Plague Hound. The Hellhounds of old were quite formidable and opposing in World at War, but gradually they got slower, less aggressive, and less threatening as the series went on. These Plague Hounds changed that. For starters, they violently explode into a cloud of necrotic gas when killed. This cloud can damage players and slow down zombies, which you may think is actually a bonus, but consider how a bunch of zombies suddenly slowing down would impact your escape routes. When those zombies pick up speed again, you'll have two separate hordes of zombies coming after you from different directions, and the potential of being surrounded by them increases. This is a subtle and very clever way to increase the chances of dying at high rounds when the zombies become more lethal and these hordes are now more dangerous. I like the Plague Hounds. Mechanically, they're a cool evolution of the Hellhound. I'm not too keen on the design though. They're a bit uninspired and kind of generic monster for my tastes. I was hoping they'd go with a design that's a bit more, grounded. Which has been interesting since I'm quite a fan of the new special enemy, the Megaton. I did mention that special over-the-top creatures were becoming unappreciated by the community. But I feel that the Megaton fits really well into Die Maschine. He's this big, radioactive, imposing dude that always seems to show up right when I'm starting to feel comfortable. If you can manage to drain his health to 0, he will shed his hazmat suit and split in half, with the two halves coming after you for revenge as independent entities. At first, I assumed the splitting animation was just an eye-rolling holdover from the over-the-top magic stuff from the Blundell era, until I realized there's a joke here, with the punchline being an enemy mechanic. So guys, the Cold War, fear of the atom bomb and nuclear annihilation, radiation, atom bombs, splitting the atom, splitting. That's an incredibly classy and inspired idea for an enemy. When I realized that's why the atomic zombie split in half as a gameplay mechanic, I started grinning uncontrollably. What makes the Plague Hound and the Megaton cool as well is they're very situational. If you don't turn on the power, the Plague Hounds don't seem to show up. If you don't turn on Pack-a-Punch, the Megaton doesn't seem to show up. New players don't need to feel pressured to progress in the map if they don't want to. You can comfortably just run around killing only zombies, and the map allows it. Additionally, the map itself is constructed with an astonishing amount of love and care for the atmosphere it aims to create. The moment it all clicked with me is when the random dynamic fog system kicked in, and the map was shrouded in this mist. I retreated into the knocked bunker and found myself surrounded by glowing eyes I could barely see in the mist, and the moaning wails of the dead filling my ears. I was instantly teleported back to that fateful night I played Nazi Zombies for the first time, and became helplessly addicted to the mode. Maybe my expectations were just very low after hating what zombies had become during the Blundell era, but this zombies mode really stuck with me and made me feel nostalgic in a way I wasn't expecting. This isn't to say it's all sunshine and rainbows, though. I do have a couple of nitpicks that I would like to address. There's an issue in gaming that I call the Great HUDification, which basically means that as time goes on, we're seeing more and more games just cluttering their UIs with HUD markers, outlines on things, tooltips, locating items of interest with a giant green arrow, etc., etc. And it gets to the point where the player is starting to be trained to watch their HUD, not the game world itself. It's very weird to see a horde of zombies and they all have this comical zombie gamer tag floating above them with this cartoony health bar. If the goal was to make the mode feel more artificial, less scary, and less natural, then I can respect that. But it is a night and day difference when you turn off a lot of that HUD nonsense. The enemies you fight and the map around you suddenly starts to seem more pronounced since you're not watching a HUD anymore. In my personal opinion, I'd recommend folks only leave the health bars on for the Megaton, because you're missing out on a lot of really neat body language from the undead themselves that's obscured by the attention-grabbing HUD elements. Turn it off so that you're watching the zombies, not watching their health bars. My second point of criticism would be the removal of theater mode support for zombies, which negatively impacts content creators' ability to make a variety of content for the mode. Next would be the PlayStation timed exclusivity of an entire mode for 1 year. It was not cool when the Xbox 360 had exclusivity deals, and waiting an entire year for this mode to be available on PC and Xbox is not okay. But unfortunately, I understand that deals like these are made high up the chain of command, with the developers themselves having, unfortunately, little input. Now, my final bit of criticism is hard to say when it comes to developer input. Treyarch has a spotty track record when it comes to polish in their Call of Duty games, but this is without a doubt their buggiest release ever, somehow beating Black Ops 4 in terms of instability, lack of polish, and just general sloppiness. I bought this game for the PS4 to play Zombies split screen with Alex, and we had quite a nasty surprise when we learned that split screen just didn't work in Zombies. It's been about a month since release, and the split screen still does not work in Zombies, and barely functions in multiplayer. I don't care who at Treyarch or Activision saw split screen just doesn't work in Zombies in QA's report of known issues and deemed it acceptable to ship. But this is ridiculous, and the higher-ups and those in management for timelines need to be more flexible. Issues like these reflect badly on the company and what it sees as acceptable in a product. Even if it's fixed by the time I upload this, I will keep in the back of my head that Treyarch thought their split screen being broken for an entire month was an acceptable bug to ship with, and I'll be approaching future Treyarch releases with hesitation. Do better. Now, with all of that out of the way, as a whole, mechanically, the new Zombies mode is a focused and incredibly well thought out horde mode, and Die Maschine is a wonderful welcome home for the Zombies mode. It's not the defensive undead horror nightmare of World at War, but it's an action-heavy reinvention of the mode that I think is quite strong. It is very different from the classic Zombies formula, but as a new thing, I think it's quite fun. There's always the risk of microtransactions, poor story choices, and weird and confusing maps in the future dragging the mode down, but this reboot has left Zombies in a very good place, and I hope they don't squander this incredible second chance they have. I'm cautiously optimistic to see what the DLC season has in store. I'm looking forward to the new modes Treyarch releases, and for the first time in a while, I'm excited about Zombies, and it feels really good to say that. Wow, congratulations if you are still here. This was a long video. I thought I'd close this out with something unscripted. Black Ops Cold War is an interesting game to talk about, and I feel bad about criticizing it. It's not a very good Cold War game. I think it's one of the worst Call of Duties in recent years, in my opinion. That's entirely subjective though, but criticizing it doesn't feel right because the developers, Raven Software and Treyarch, were put into an unfair position here. And yeah, it's just the multiplayer, it needed more time in the oven, as well as a complete reinvention of the skill-based matchmaking system. The campaign definitely needed more time. There was something interesting there with the campaign, but every aspect of it was too shallow. It just needed to be fleshed out more, and I bet it would have been if they just had more time. The zombies, ironically, is the best part, and I think that's because the production value in Zombies is noticeably toned down from Black Ops 3 and 4, so it was probably a lot easier to just quickly get made. Just as a whole, as a package, Cold War just ain't it. I don't like it. I enjoyed Modern Warfare a lot more than this. Black Ops 4 I did not really like as a Call of Duty game, and I definitely remember enjoying the multiplayer more than this, even though I thought Black Ops 4's multiplayer wasn't that great. I can't recommend Cold War on just the Zombies mode, because not everybody likes Call of Duty's Zombies. And it's just, you know, here we are. If anything, check out Black Ops 1, it's a really fun game. Yeah, just in the comments section, guys, let me know how I did. I have never made a video this long before and scripted. And yeah, this was really fun to make. With that being said, I'll see you guys on the next video, and just like and share, please. I put so much time into this.